I was going to say good morning, but it is good afternoon where you are in the UK. So good afternoon.
Thanks, Catherine. Good afternoon to you and good morning also.
Right? So it is just a beautiful world that people who are on opposite, well, not opposite sides of the world, but different countries can come together on Zoom, just soul sister to soul sister and connect and share each other's experiences, strengths, and hopes. And you are just an amazing woman. And this is being recorded during National Women's History Month. And I thought, I am meeting these women who have her story versus his story. And I thought I want to collect some of these stories and share them with the other survivors on what their story was like and what their surviving story is like and how are they thriving today. And you were so gracious to be able to make time to come on. I know you're busy. Is this your second book that you're?
Yeah, this is my second book. Yeah.
So I'm just going to hand the mic over to you, EJ, and you can just let people know who you are, and we'll put how they can reach you and your website and all that on the bottom later on. But here's the microphone.
Thank you. Well, it's such a pleasure to be with you, Catherine. You do such good work, and you like you say, we come together, we've become soul sisters. And I think, when we survive, we find a new family. And I hadn't realized how beautiful this family was until the latter part of my life. I'm 49 now. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm 48. I'm 49 this year. And so it's only in the last few years when I've really understood the power of my voice, what I'm doing, the work that I'm doing, that I've also been able to embrace my family, my survivor family, because we get it. We hurt, we understand, we respect, we care, we listen, we appreciate all the things and many other things that we need to do. So, let me tell you, Catherine. So I kind of remember back when I was about 2 years old and I was back living with my mum and my stepdad. I lived with my two brothers, and from time to time, my step siblings would visit. We had a cat called Honey. I had a rabbit, and I remember next door, and I distinctively remember this cat next door. It was as big as me, and it was called Scamp, and I loved Scamp, and it really was the start of my love of animals, furry things, the furry babies, and I was very happy. I knew no different. It was the way my life was, and it was great. My first memory of an assault was when I was 9 years old. And I was on holiday with my mother and stepfather in Greece. We used to go to a Greek restaurant every other night, maybe. When you go away for 2 weeks, you kind of get to know the community, you make friends. And we got to know the restaurant owners, these two guys, and they were brilliant, right? They were really good fun. They would dance with us, throw plates around. The atmosphere was buzzing constantly. And then when the children had finished and all the restaurant the meals had been done, the restaurant owners would take the children outside to go and see the animals. I loved animals. Scamp was my first real memory and experience. And we'd go outside and we'd see the donkeys, the goats, the ponies, the sheep. I mean, everything that you could imagine as a farmyard animal was there. And we used to just pet the animals. And there was probably, I remember, like a group of kids, maybe 8 or 10 of us. And there was another girl there who became my friend. And so we'd go out. And then this one particular night where they'd got to know us a little bit more, we went out, bundling out, all charging up, excited to see the animals. And I remember looking over my shoulder and I could still see the taverna. We were maybe, 30, 40, 50 yards away. It wasn't very far. And you could hear the laughter, the dancing, and the happy atmosphere. And we were just petting the animals. And then this restaurant owner came a little bit closer to me and pulled me to the side and out of the light. And I was still looking at the animals, and he sexually assaulted me. It didn't last very long. It didn't last very long at all, but it was enough for me to freeze. And then when I ran back in, I didn't run him back in and tell anybody because I didn't know what had happened. I had no clue what had just happened to me. No one had taught me this. Nobody had made me aware of sexual abuse, sexual assault, and no one had ever done that to me before. So I lived with it. I didn't tell anybody. My parents, I don't think they even detected that there was anything wrong. We just carried on the rest of the holiday and came home, and it stayed with me. And then the next couple of years, I don't remember too much. I just remember being happy with my dad at the weekends and then enjoying, you know, some of my primary school. I remember significant things about my primary school. And then one day my father picked me up on my own and my brothers weren't with me. And I saw them at the window of the house crying. And I got into my father's car and we drove off to horse riding, because he used to take me horse riding for the weekend, and then we'd go to the sweet shop and swimming. Now, my father was a handsome man. He was beautiful. He was cheeky. I loved him more than I loved anyone or anything in my life. He was just brilliant. I wasn't hurt by the fact my parents are separated because I was so young and I was going back and forth between. I had no insecurities. I just accepted that was my life. And yeah, it was great. On the way to the riding stables, we would chat, and then he pulled off into a newsagent car park. Stopped the car, and I could even remember that smell at that point. And he said, you know what, there's a little bit of a problem in our relationship. I'm not sure I can see you again. And at 11 years old, you're thinking, okay, sorry, I'm not sure what this really means. But I know my brothers aren't coming. And he said, look, I'm going to call you tomorrow. And I want you to decide if you want to be with me on Mother's Day weekend or your mum. I said, well, I'd quite like to be with Mummy because it's Mother's Day weekend. And he said, well, that's the weekend I'm seeing you. Excuse me. And, you know, you do so much dancing with your mum, and I like to sort of spend more time with you. I don't get to see you so much anymore. And then I went off to my horse riding lesson, and I remember riding Dulcie. She was a bay, beautiful, beautiful horse. Really enjoyed my lesson. And then my daddy picked me up. We went home to his house where his wife and his two new children were. And I remember making cakes, fairy cakes, but I was really nervous. I suddenly felt really nervous because I didn't really know what was going to happen. And he dropped me home on the next day on the Sunday, and he rang me up that evening as he said he would. And he said to me, right, you know, have you made a decision? You know, on Mother's Day, do you want to be with me on Mother's Day, or do you want to see your mum? And I said, well, Daddy, I want to see Mummy on Mother's Day. I can hear myself saying it, but I still want to see you. And he said, well, look, you've made your decision and I can't see you again. And that was that. The phone went down. I'm 49 this year, and I've not seen him since. That, I can't tell you how that broke. If he hadn't been a very nice person, if there had been something that was, you might have made it easier to balance that out in my thoughts, but he wasn't. He was the love of my life. And he took, when he put the phone down, he took my heart, my soul, my mind. He took everything, my guts. He took everything from me. I was left in this as a shell, heartbroken. I'd listened to, I don't know if you've heard of Cliff Richard, but he sung this song called Daddy's Home. Mm-hmm. And I would listen to that most nights, along with some of the Elton John love songs, and just cried. I became a really sad little girl. And I'd gone from a really nice, bubbly child to this kind of broken girl. And I just started secondary school. And I remember in secondary school how it was almost like someone flicked a switch. I'd gone from really excited to go to big school. And here I am in big school, actually near where my father lived, because he wanted me to be closer to him, and he'd gone. And I became very naughty at school. I was very troubled, and I went through some very difficult times at school, very broken, all what you would expect. You know, I became bulimic. I started displaying OCD traits. I was very nervous. I was put on medication because I was constantly being sick. So I was very nervous, and so it would trigger sickness. And I used to shake a lot and cry, anxious. I would never hurt anybody. I'd never hurt anybody in my life apart from myself. But I would verbally be abusive to many people around me, my senior, my teachers, the authorities, my family. And I became a loner, actually. I never really felt like I had friends at school. When I was about 13, 14, they threw me into isolation at school and threw me in to see a junior psychiatrist, labelled me a juvenile delinquent, wanted to remove me from the school, but my mum was begging them. But of course, if we just go back a little bit, after I was very broken, a family friend saw the weakness in me and became my friend. And while he became my friend, he then degraded me, tortured me, raped me, bullied me, manipulated me. But it became a part of my life that I just believed was part of who I am. All the memories of the assault as a 9-year-old child came back. Obviously the pain from my father leaving, and this guy when I was around 12 or 13 added layer upon layer upon layer of me feeling insignificant, for me feeling I wasn't worthy, for me feeling like this is how men treat you. And so you just suck it up, right? Just get used to it. This was my normal. So I became very lonely. They didn't send me out of school. They did keep me there, but they kept me in isolation. I was deemed a risk to lots of people, and I was. I mean, I was a risk to everybody around me. I was a risk to myself mainly, but a risk to everybody else. I was drinking now. I was taking drugs. I had night terrors. I was panicky. I was paranoid. And I actually still feel, even though I'm 48, I feel like I'm a late emotional developer. Even though I'm a professional businesswoman now, emotionally, I think it's taken a lot of time for me to catch up. And actually, will I ever catch up? Probably not. I've still got a lot of childlike behaviors in me. And when I say that, I mean much more from a fun place now, because I've reconnected with myself. When I was 15, 16 years old, I stepped away from my perpetrator.
How old was he?
He would have been in his 40s.
So you're 15, he's in his 40s. That's
so
significant.
No, he started grooming me at 12, 13.
Yeah.
And I stepped away. I broke free from him when I was about 15, 16. So yeah, there was a lot of years between us. He took my virginity at, well, I didn't, 12, 13. And I'd never been taught what happens when you lose your virginity, right? I'd never had that conversation. So I was bleeding. And I remember him laughing because he realized he'd taken my virginity. And why wouldn't he, right? I was only 12, 13. And I remember lying there in a wood, and now it fills me with horrors now to replay that scene of that girl, being laughed at while I was there in a mess. So I tried to step away from him 15, 16, but it wasn't easy, because obviously at 15, 16, I'd also become emotionally bonded with him. You have a trauma bond, and when he wasn't being horrible to me, he was being really nice. He was giving me lots of money. He was buying me clothes. He was buying me really nice perfume. He even bought me a ring, a diamond and blue topaz ring. And I threw it all away, actually, when I found it all in my jewelry, because I didn't want to throw it in the river, because I feel like, or the water, because I feel that's where beautiful things go. And this wasn't. Some of the stuff that I found was not beautiful. So I digressed there. But anyway, so I stepped away, but it wasn't easy. PTSD had started catching up with me, 16, 17, 18. Again, I had no clue that I had PTSD. I just was so confused. I was very complex. Like, God, I still miss my dad. And I was just in this dark, dark place. I had started sort of throughout my drunken evenings, occasionally turning up on my father's doorstep. But now he would shut the door in my face because I was the wayward daughter and he wanted nothing to do with me. He didn't own the fact that he had created the wayward daughter. He just shut the door and walked away. And so that was kind of my life up until around 18. And I lived with my mum still and my stepfather. They brought me up from the age of 2. They gave me a very stable life in that respect. And they gave me everything that I wanted. You know, when you could look at my situation, you think, how could someone like her be so broken? Because I had a great upbringing, but I hated all these people. I hated everybody. I was violent towards my stepfather. I was abusive to my mother. I'd stopped speaking to them all for 1 whole year. And I was in so much pain. And but they still loved me. They still stood by me. They didn't know I was being abused. They thought this was complete fallout from my father, which of course it was, but it was bigger than that. So from a crime point of view, this was a very easy cover-up. And then when I was 19, everything changed. I was working in a bar and a guy came in, one of the regulars. His name's Chris. I still remind him of this conversation. He's got no clue. And he said, EJ, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, I want to be a dancer. He said, oh, you're never going to be a dancer. I said, why? He said, you're just always out partying. I can't imagine you doing anything seriously. And I was like, no, I want to go into business. I want to work with children and adults. And he was just laughing. He said, oh, I'd like to see that happen. And then not long after that, my stepfather, who at this point, remember, I hated, was rushed into emergency hospital with a heart problem. And I got the call, I was told, and I dropped everything. And I ran up, I got myself into London and sat by his bed. And he was there all wired up and looked empty. And everyone was around his bed and everyone was crying and everyone was being emotional. And I'm looking at him thinking, oh my goodness, this man has loved me since I was the age of 2. I've hit him, I've spat at him, I've called him the most horrendous things, I've treated them terribly. And now he's lying here dying. And you know what? My dad was on a pedestal and everyone else was down here. And then suddenly it went, and I said, please don't die. I need you. I need you in my life. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry for all the hurt that I've caused you, but please don't die. I need you. And he was given a lot of morphine and he was given a lot of, just a lot of everything. And then he kind of came round at the weekend and I hadn't left his bed and my mum was getting worried because I was just sat there constantly. And he came round and I remember we have a program in the UK called Dad's Army. And it was on the telly and he loved that. And he sort of started coming around and I was there and the Dad's Army was on. He started laughing and I said to him, you know, I'm so glad you're still with us and I'm just sorry. I'm gonna sort this out. And he's now 84. He's my best friend. Huh. He is everything to me. He is my savior, my best friend, my soulmate, and the father that I always needed. So I then took off to Spain when I was 21. Sorry, when I was 19. He came out of hospital and I thought, that's it, I'm going to go. I just went off to Spain and did Spain, UK, Spain, UK, Spain, UK for the next 3 years. Met new friends, met new people. I drank my way through Spain. I was still like really messed up.
Okay.
But it was a release to get away from the UK. I got away from my abuser. I got away from the darkness. I kind of tiptoeing into new conversations, new friends, new adventures. And when I came back at 21, I was in and out of jobs and in and out of professional situations. And then when I was 23, I thought, you know what? I need to go and get some help. And that, Catherine, is when I took myself to my first therapy session. And I sat there and I cried for 59 minutes. And I don't remember it. Oh, I remember her saying to me, walnuts are really good for you. They're good healing for your heart. Well, I can tell. I went to the supermarket and I had a trolley load of walnuts, and I'm just scoffing these, and it was then that's when it all turned around for me.
It was the walnuts.
It was the walnuts, and it really, really, it felt like my heart was healing with walnuts. And so at 23, I went into therapy. I then decided to leave all these superficial jobs that I'd been doing and set up a dance class. And while I'd set that up, I did a bit of temping. And I was like, oh, I love this, because my speciality is tap dancing. So I then set up some tap dance classes. Obviously, it wasn't enough to keep a roof over my head, but it was certainly enough to start my mind stimulation and my heart healing. So I then took myself into a fitness training course and trained in fitness and started working in the fitness industry. So I moved on a few years in that sort of space, and then built up sort of like clients and classes and members. And then when I was around 26, 27, I launched my first performing arts school. And I think we started with, 15 children. And we now have like 200-300 kids. I have a team of 30. I have a PA and an admin team looking after the business. And I then set up a fitness company as well. And we have a great variety of members there, aging from sort of 18 to 118. And we look at nutrition, fitness, well-being. So I have these two businesses that run parallel. And the other thing I forgot to say, when I left school, my headmistress said to me, don't think you're coming back, Emma. You have failed in school. You're not going to go anywhere. And of course, that then sat in my head. I'm like, I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm a failure. And then you kind of move into this arena and you set up my businesses. And I thought, maybe she was wrong. Maybe I'm not a failure. And I started getting a bit of confidence. I was still quite nervous in business, because going into business is quite a big thing. And, I was learning all the time. I was very reactive. I wasn't proactive as a businesswoman. So, because I was just so young. And then I started to learn what proactive meant, and that reactive you leave away. My therapy deepened. I stopped drinking. I stopped taking drugs. I was asked to choreograph some shows, and everything started to feel stronger around me. I had my beautiful stepfather, my mother, my family, and life was good. I had furry animals, and I was embraced in my own world, and I felt together. And it was the first time that I started, and when I say together, I was coming together. Maybe I was feeling like I was coming together. And then when I was around late 30s, early 40s, so just 9 years ago, one of the local TV companies, That's TV, asked if I would come and talk to them about my business journey, because they'd seen me in the community and the work that I was doing with my community. I do a lot of charity work as well. And I said, yeah, sure, I'd love to. I performed through my childhood. I performed in some wonderful spaces, in the West End, on television and magazines. And it was like, oh, I'm now bringing my performance back into my life. So I went and did this show. It was an hour show. And they said, oh, we really, really like your style, EJ. There's someone going on maternity leave. Would you consider, with your well-being health head on, coming to present one of our health shows for just a month or two? And I said, yeah, that's fine. Well, I was there 4 years, and they created me my own show called The Wellbeing Show. And I was then known as the face of The Wellbeing Show on the That's TV shows here in the UK. through that process, and bearing in mind, I still haven't talked about my story, and I still haven't talked about my pain. I'm now interviewing people about their pain and their difficulties and their health stories and their well-being stories. And I was getting more and more into authentic voices and sharing. It wasn't just about fitness and nutrition. It was now going into real life matters. And I'm thinking every week I'm recording these. I feel such an imposter because, you know, I'm seen as the presenter for the Wellbeing Show, the director of Stage Works and Nutritious Works and the successful women. And I felt an imposter. But of course, I wasn't. But I didn't know how to close that gap. And then a magazine company, Venus Magazine for women, they contacted me and they asked if I could be on the front cover of their magazine and would I share my business story with them to empower women. So I was like, yeah, of course, yeah, I will. But I want you to know that actually it wasn't so easy to become this businesswoman. I had to go through a lot of difficulties to become this woman that I am today. And that was it, as simple as that. And then they said, could I now compare the event that they were doing in the summer of 2017? And I said, yeah, I guess so. And can you share you talked about your personal story. Can you share that with us? And we'll put it on the screens in the stadium. And I wasn't, I guess I just go, yeah, because whenever I feel like it's the right thing, yes is an instant for me. So it felt right. I said, yeah, I'll do that. And they recorded my personal story for the first time ever.
So the first time you tell your story, it's on a big screen.
In front of 400 people.
Yeah. Okay.
Actually, I tell a tiny lie because I'd also started on this journey of talking. I decided to write my book, and then a media company networking, a really good friend of mine works with the BBC here. She created a network. And she said, EJ, would you be prepared to come and share a little bit of your story and the fact you've got the book out here? So I said, yeah. So that was kind of a taster for me. There was like 20 people in the room. And I was like this. My heart was beating. I was nearly sick. But I did it. So it kind of like, there was a tiny taster, but nothing prepares you. Let me tell you, Catherine. When you're in this room and there's this grand room in the football stadium, 400 people, and there's like 1, 2, 3, 5 screens all around, and you are on those screens with your story being shared. And then they invite you onto the stage. And I'm thinking, oh my, what am I doing? What am I doing? My parents were on a table with some friends, and my chaperone. And then my theme music for that night was "This Girl Is on Fire."
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so they put the videography up, they're calling my name, and all I can hear is, no, don't do this. And my music comes on, "This Girl Is on Fire," and my chaperone says, EJ, you've got to go. I said, I cannot do this. And I'm in this beautiful dress, my hair's all done.
Right.
And he's saying, EJ, you've got to go now. And of course, they're all waiting, they're clapping, and I had sick in my throat. And I said, okay, let's do this. And it was like my angels took me, Catherine, and they took me down the runway, and I'm smiling, and I'm doing all my showbiz, you know, dancing, all my years of performing's coming out of me, and inside my heart is beating, I'm nervous. Everyone's just watched the videography, and I get on stage, and I have I think it's like a 5-minute slot of talking. And at that point, I've spoken in my career for 20 odd years publicly, but when you're suddenly speaking about yourself personally, I needed cards, and I was trembling.
Yeah.
And I stopped halfway through and I said, I'm so sorry. I've never spoken publicly about my story. I feel really nervous. And the room just went, ah. And then I continued with a much calmer aura around me. I felt like I was now being authentic, and you could have heard a pin drop in the room.
All the difference. And they can feel it. They can feel authenticity.
Yes. Anyway, the night was brilliant. It was a very successful evening. People were coming up to me, thanking me. And then the next day I got lots of messages in my private inbox on Facebook saying, I was at this event last night and I wanted to thank you because your voice has encouraged me now to go and get some help, and message after message after message after message. And you're thinking, this is why I've done it. I always said, if I could help one person, then it would have made a difference. And now suddenly people connecting with me, and some of the stories I was reading, I was like, oh my goodness. So I encouraged everybody the best way I could. I don't think everyone has to stand on a stage in front of 400 people or be in a magazine or on the telly. You could talk to your friends, find a therapist, write it down in a text message, write it in a letter, and not be ashamed. I am so proud to be able to be here saying I had over 30 years of therapy to be here with you today, Catherine, right? To be coherent. I know I got a little bit emotional talking about my stepdad, but to be coherent, to be constructive, to be positive, to be authentic, to be able to put a voice to a difficult situation, to remind people they're not alone. We are together, we are a family, we can get through this together. After this event, I thought actually it might car crash my career being authentic, but it didn't. I think a new respect grew from many people around me in my world, in my professional world, and people were great. People were great. And I felt thoroughly embraced. I felt thoroughly empowered and safe, but they didn't make me feel safe. I'd made me feel safe. I moved away when I changed my life, when I was in my 20s. I'd moved away from a crowd of people that they weren't necessarily bad people. They just weren't the right people for me. They were the people that helped me put a veil over my face and my difficulties. And now here I am. I haven't drunk or taken anything illegal for nearly 26 years. And actually, when I look back, I probably didn't really enjoy it when I did. It was just a very big cover up for me. So I then wrote my book, Don't Hold Back, which was published in 2018 when I was 45. I then joined a radio station around here as a presenter for the Wellbeing Show. I moved away from the TV and I moved into radio. I then was asked in various national magazines, podcasts, counselling directories, supports, and so on across the world if I would share my story, which I've done globally. And it's just growing and growing and growing. I still have my businesses. We're 21 years this year in business, so not bad for the girl going nowhere. And I still have a great team. Through COVID, my team have been they are far more talented than me. They are brilliant. They've kept my business, they've kept our business, I call it our business because we all work together. They've kept the businesses going, and all the children and adults are still enjoying the entertainment. So, touch wood, we can still continue soon when we come out of COVID. And whilst COVID has been difficult for many, and we take on that as well, it has also been a very beautiful place for us to grow as a company. But I've also
go virtual? Did you go virtual with your?
Yeah. So we went on the 23rd of March 2020. We went to lockdown on the 24th of March. After 24 hours of not sleeping, my entire business was online. I had actually been fortunate enough to have done a lot of Zoom calls previous to that for about a year. So I had that kind of bit of, numpty on the Zoom side. So I didn't feel overwhelmed by it, and I got all my team onto it. So yes, we went virtual. And then over the last year, 2 years, I'm represented. I am, my story is being shared left, right, and center. And then just before Christmas 2020, my story went into the national press. It was headlined in the national press. And on the back of that, a grandma contacted my PA, and she said, do you think Emma Jane would write another book? Because I feel that, her story could share valuable lessons to the next generation and the generations to come. And I would buy it for that reason. And I said to my PA, not a cat and house chance, I'm writing another book. And here I am, 3 months in, writing my book. And the purpose is to support the reduction of sex offence crimes by giving a voice, understanding conclusions, understanding from the voices what isn't happening, what is happening, what should be happening, how can we change it. And in my process, I'm also speaking to the other side. And when I say the other side, I talk about the sex offender side. You know, for me to give, personally, I feel if I can balance out my knowledge with understanding the whole of that difficult picture, and I mean that from victim, survivor, offender, I can really get behind the real voices who are doing the support charities, the speaking to the offenders, the support groups, the restorative justice, and understand what isn't happening and give a reasoned response to what I believe should be happening. This isn't about glorifying the other side. This isn't about, you know, putting it up on a pedestal. This is about saying we need to know more. You know, as a survivor 20, 30 years ago, forget it. I'd have never had that conversation. But now as a woman in her 40s, I also understand how important it is to be armed with knowledge, to be armed with education, because that education is what's going to change. It will be controversial, I'm sure, to many people. It won't be to you, Catherine, because you understand and respect and align with me on that. But it will be upsetting for some people. And that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it to create a conversation, to make change. And without those conversations, no change can ever happen. So that, in a 40-minute nutshell, is where I am now and why I'm here and why I now want to push on as a child sex abuse activist, because I know how important it is to do that. And I sleep really well now, because I feel whatever happens, regardless of where I go, my legacy is complete, right? It's in a safe place, doing the right thing.
One of the things you had mentioned, and I think it bears putting a little attention on, is the length of time it took. Like you said, 30 years. I don't want to bypass that. 30 years of therapy. People think that because they went to a therapist twice or they went for 3 months, that that they're done. They've done their work. And we talk about doing your work. What people don't fully realize, and you just shared, is it takes a long time. If what happened to you was once, or grooming over a period of a year or two, that affects you for the rest of your life. That is just that's like you've been branded. And doing your work might take 5, 10, 15, 30 years before it's never gone, but it's foggy here on Sebago Lake. Like, I don't know if you can see out the window,
Yes,
but right, it's foggy. Healing looks like very subtle clarity. What triggered you doesn't trigger you as much. What caused a level 10 emotion causes an 8, and then a 7. And then before you know it, you realize, wow, I didn't react or respond like I would have 3 years ago or whatever. That is a process. So what I wanted to ask you about that is, what kinds of therapy, for me, it was a smorgasbord. It was all these, just lots of different kinds of therapy. What kinds of therapy did you find really useful for you during that 30 years?
And I think it's really important to point all this out, and even now, I check in with a clairvoyant now, not because I feel like I need to go over my past, but just to feel in check with where I am now with my energy systems. And that's been a real process, because I never would have thought I would have gone to a clairvoyant. So I have done an A to Z of therapy. Talking therapy was my first therapy. I moved into lots of holistic therapies, Reiki, acupuncture, EFT, picture therapy, the gong, the sound therapy, everything. I did psychotherapy, hypnotherapy, and psychiatric support. And it was all helpful because it was a blend. And I don't think, I did talking therapy to start with, and, I thought 12 weeks and I'd be out of here.
How'd that work for you?
It didn't work. And then after 12 weeks, I'm thinking, okay, now I need to look at something else. Talking therapy is great, but now I want to look at the more holistic side, the Reiki. They did a lot of Reiki on me. And so I did all this stuff, and then Reiki, and I thought, oh, I'll do a course of Reiki and that'll be it. And of course of acupuncture, and then EFT, and then picture tapping, and then sound therapy, and down.
Right.
Now, for me, to answer your question, I did a journey with a guy, he's called Roger, and I love him. It was lovely. He was an older guy, and I saw him in the latter part of my therapy years, so in my late 30s. He was a psychotherapist, hypnotherapist, and he'd been highly recommended to me. So I went along, open-minded. I was very open-minded now at this point, and open to anything or anyone who would give me another insight. And I had one session with him, and he got me to do all sorts of thinking and talking and hypnotherapy and so on and so forth. And he took me back to places that I never even thought were imaginable. He unlocked stuff for me. And maybe I wasn't ready until then to unlock any pain or any destruction that I'd had in my life. And the first session I felt quite gentle. It was quite nice. It was quite connective. And I came out feeling really energized and very like, yay, this is great. And what I really liked about him, Catherine, was he was like, it's great to see you today, EJ. No, let's get another date in the diary. No, book 4 and you get 1 free, and do 12 and you get 10 free, whatever. There was no deal, there was no offer, he was just like, go and see how you are, then let's just talk again sometime. And I was like, okay, this is weird, this is new. And so I checked out that day. I went home and I was emotional, but I was energized, and then I felt confident. And then about 2 weeks later, I checked it. I said, can I see you again? And he's like, yeah, sure. So I went in and saw him again, and we went a little bit deeper this time. And I don't know what it was about him. I really felt safe. Mm. And he took me into a deep hypnosis, which again, I never would have bought into. I always thought hypnotherapy was when they get you to act like a duck, or, pretend you're a fish or something, on stage. And he took me completely out. I knew what was going on, but he took me completely out. And he said to me, I'm going to count back from 3. And when you open your eyes, you're going to see your problem. And we counted back from 3. And when I woke up, when I opened my eyes, my problem was there. I don't want to sort of share too much, because I think these things are still personal, but he had morphed into my problem. To say I was hysterical is an understatement. I was hysterical, highly strung, screaming. He had to hold me down and control and comfort me. And I remember going home, and my husband at the time said, is this the right kind of therapy for you? I was really like shaking and sick, and I cried for about 2 weeks. Yeah. And then suddenly it was like that flick had switched. And I had one more session with him about 6 weeks later. And that was it. 3 sessions. And it was like, I couldn't have done that 20 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
I had done, it was a building block. It's like Tetris. That's how I see it. Like, the Tetris.
Yeah, absolutely.
Building. And now I'm here. And then 1 year later, I rang him again. And I said, can I have another session? He's like, yeah, whenever. And I had one more session, and it was calm. It was controlled. And And then 2 years later, I rang him and he'd retired. And I was thinking, oh, where do I go now? I'm at the Z of my therapy, right? Well, what do I do now? And then my angels came and I went to see my clairvoyant. And then she became, it wasn't about going back, reliving, going dark and mysterious and question. Now it was about this beautiful sunshine, this beautiful world, and now how I can embrace it. So she was then a significant part of my Dex journey. And then she moved away actually 2 years ago, and I have seen one clairvoyant since, and that's fine. And I feel good. I talk now, I write, I speak very publicly. I'm very honest, I'm very open. If I write and put anything on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, you know where it's coming from. And that's kind of now my therapy, because it's working towards the support of giving those other people their voices and helping them close that gap of pain. And, you know, you don't find your voice overnight. And, you know, if I can help you close that gap of pain sooner by finding someone to talk to, then that's a big tick in the box. And so, yeah, so it feels good now. It feels good to give other people their voice, to give other people their hope, to give other people their opportunity to survive and feel okay with who they are. My heart feels like my tech tree therapy has, you know, completed me and given me taken my black heart back to a red heart, and it's gone from dark to colorful again, and it feels good. And it's been the best thing that I've ever done. And
you talked about your dance, and I wanted to talk about that too, for survivors who, you know, they've never had the luxury of thinking, what is it I want to do now that I'm not, you know, trying to find shelter and food today? You know, now I get to think about, ooh, thunder, I love that. I get to think about, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? And for you, you had a love of dance, and you skimmed over that quickly, but I mean, it's significant. I mean, you had a love of dance, so you followed your heart and your own your inner longing. I love to dance. I want to know more about dance. That morphing from, this is what I love and what I want to do, to, you've had a freaking business for 21 years. And from what I understand, some of your dancers have been in performances here in the United States. We've seen on TV and on music videos and Broadway, you know, amazing. So for women who are saying, okay, maybe I have or haven't even graduated high school. I am in the process of surviving the surviving. I'm going through the therapy, and I'm starting to just think about what is my joy, and what do I love, and what do I want to do? What would you say to them? How would you speak to that?
So I have a few processes that I have taken from my story and taken that forward. So, you know, I've understood forgiveness, I've understood boundaries, I've understood communication, I've understood language, and I've understood what they mean to me. I also use what I call my own traffic light system. It's the one process. And my one process is through the traffic light. So you've got your red light is your thought process. Your amber light is your why process and your process. So your green is your action. So, you know, I came across years of what's just happened. Why has it happened? And what's my action to make this proactive? Because proactive makes it a beautiful place. Reactive makes it quite ugly. So my one method is observation, absorbing the world around you. So what do you need to be Catherine? What do I need to be Emma? What does Jess need to be Jess, apart from that lovely dress she's wearing? So what do we need?
I don't know if you can hear her, but I hear her listening to you and crying.
Oh,
okay. She loves dance. So you're talking about
We're like
dance.
sisters with that dress and poetry.
Yeah, and the dance.
Dance is really important, you know, and it's powerful, right? You know, observing my world. What do I like? So me, I like dancing. I love singing. No one loves me singing. I love singing. I
Yes.
love nature. I love being outside. I love being creative with my work. I love the people I work with. I have a great bunch of friends. I have a great family. I have a dog. I have 2 cats, and I have 2 baby bunnies running around me right now. They keep nibbling my toes. So I have a lot of.
Does your cat look like Scamp? Did you ever get?
No. She's little and black, and while I'm talking to you, she's playing with a mouse outside. So yeah, so I know what I need. You know, Scamp was my memory, and here I am with it's like a farmyard in my house, but I've embraced animals. So I observe what I need. I need dancing. I'm not actively involved in my businesses as such, but I am there managing them with a team. So, you know, 2 or 3 times a year, I go back in and make sure the productions are working. And if anyone needs cover, I can jump in. And actually, I quite like it when they need cover and I can grab my tap shoes and go down and teach a class. And fitness is very important to me. Well-being, being mentally, emotionally, and physically in line with yourself. And now I use something called Living Your Fresh Life, which is something I've trademarked because if you think of yourself as a 3-piece pie, and one of that pieces is emotional health, one is mental health, one is physical health. If one of those pieces is missing, that pie doesn't work. And so if you're not whole, now when you talk about mental health, emotional health, and physical health, everyone has a different spin on it. But just to simplify it, if you're emotionally well and talking and connecting and embracing the creative side of you, you can fill that pie up. So look to get to 80 to 100% of that pie to feel in a good place. Mental health, you know, understanding what it is that you need to support where you are right now, understanding where you are with what's going on. Are you suffering with anxiety, PTSD? Are you feeling depressed? Are you paranoid? Are you panicky? And what can you do about that? And physical health is not just eating well. And I could do another 4 shows for you on that. But you know, eating well.
Do you still eat walnuts? Do you still eat walnuts?
Not as regularly, but because they go on the hips. But I'm joking. But yeah, I do eat walnuts. I eat a lot of nuts actually. I find nuts quite good, and the oils for me really good. So I eat well. I sleep well. I exercise. I hit holistic, enjoy the meditation side of life. I know what I need. I drink lots of water. I drink mint tea. That's it. So I like to put myself, you know, 80, 100% every time in each of those 3 pieces of my pie. And I would say at the moment, I'm probably 95 to 100%, maybe not so much on the sleeping, but, you know, my pie works really well. So I needed to do that. So observing what you need. What do you need? Is it that you need to walk outside? Is it that you need to bounce on a trampoline? Is it that you need to buy a dog and go for a walk? Is it that you want to go dancing? Go and do the things that you enjoy doing. And then nurturing those things. So, you know, it's not just a one-off. You have to nurture it. So the therapy session wasn't a one-off. I thought it would be. But it wasn't. I had to nurture my mental and my emotional health, because without that, my physical body didn't work, you know, and I'm sure anyone listening to this going through difficulties will understand that. You just don't work well when anything is out of kilter. And then after you've observed and after you've nurtured, then experience it. Experience that. Feel the beauty of it. Be proactive with it. Proactive brings in your beauty. As soon as we get reactive with any situation, it can turn us ugly, and then it negates the good. So you've got your red, amber, you've got your thought process, and then you've got your actions, and then you've got your one system, and then use that to find your wholeness, and then push away the things you don't like. I hate ironing. I hate rudeness. I hate bullies. I hate things like that. So I always make sure they're not close to me. And anytime any ironing that comes into me, I'm like, get away. Anything that comes into me that just doesn't feel, like it's going to fill up my space positively, I negate it very nicely and kindly and with love.
Yeah.
Everything I do now is with kindness and love, not with anger and bitterness and pain. It's all done with kindness and love. And that is one of the biggest things that I've learned, is I can do anything with kindness and love if I have the right approach to the situation.
I want to talk about your book and what is the name of it, and is it on Amazon? Can I put that Amazon link?
So the book my first book, yes, Don't Hold Back. My second book has no name as yet. It's got millions of names. We just haven't decided on the right one. It's a bit like naming a child, isn't it? So my first book is called Don't Hold Back. You can get that on Amazon. You can find me on my website, emmajanetaylor.life. And on there, you'll see all my social media and all the platforms that I'm on, and where I speak regularly, and also all the information if you want to look further into the work that I'm doing. That's all on that website too.
Wonderful. Is there, as we wrap up, is there anything that you would like to leave us with?
There's one thing I haven't talked about, which has just come up in my life. And I think it's significant for survivors, you know, that space of my life from my father leaving and when I stepped away from my abuser. So from 11 to 16, those 5 years, I was at senior school with a load of girls. And when I left at 16, I never connected with them again until 6 weeks ago.
Wow.
36 years later. Now, someone had set up a Facebook group for our year, and they asked if I would go on, and I was like, no, I can't do it. It's too painful. In fact, I thought I've done all this work, Catherine, to be a whole person. But that one window was missing. And I hadn't realized that one window was missing until the school friend contacted me. Mm. And I sat on it for 48 hours, and I thought, actually, no, I'm going to go in. So I went in, and I was overwhelmed, and they were, you know, engaging with me, engaging in conversation. Do you remember me? I was your best friend. And I'm like, oh, whoa. I don't remember anything. I literally don't remember these conversations. And it made me feel really emotional that I had forgotten people. And I felt rude as well, because, you know, that's just not me. And, but of course, you know, trauma does that. You have memory loss, you're disassociation, you're detaching, and that's the wonderful life of trauma for you. So I spoke to these girls privately, and I said, look, you know, I've gone through some difficulties. I then shared with them the press article that had just been done on me, and I said, look, you won't know, but this is my story. And then they all came back so supportive and gracious, and, you know, saying, now it makes sense. We remember you shaking at school. We remember you being sick at school. We remember you being naughty at school. We remember you being very aloof. We remember you being rude. You weren't horrible to any of your friends, actually. They said you were always smiling, but you were always very troubled. And now it makes sense. So there's about 8 or 10 of the girls that have now embraced with my life. And it's like, it's complete. It's allowed me now to start this book. And some of them are joining with me with this book to give what they believe should have happened and didn't happen, because what they felt really sad, right? One of them wrote to me saying, I'm crying writing to this, reading your story and realizing now I saw all of that pain. I saw you shaking. I saw you nervous. I saw you, all those things we talk about. I just thought that was you. But had I known what I know now and an education on that, then I would have been able to respond and act. So that's a lot of the work that I'm doing now, Catherine, without saying too much. You know, a lot of the work that I'm doing in my second book is how can we reduce sex offence crimes? Well, there's a way we can do it, and that's by an education that isn't really being engaged with now. So it's like you've got the full me, Catherine.
I love it. I love all of it. And that's why, you know, we do the education. We just finished a 3-day statewide education here for social workers, teachers, law enforcement, prosecuting attorneys. And before that, it was the community. But boy, the schools, having the girls, you know, having the children know what to look for, how to be supportive, like that is important work. education of everyone at all levels so that we can be superheroes for each other.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so grateful. I feel like I have a new friend. So
Ditto.
I love that. So when you come to Maine, I'll show you a good time.
Yeah, and I'm really excited about speaking to you as well, and interviewing you for my book, because what you're doing is incredible, and and what I would like to leave on is, anyone watching today, remember, you do make a difference. You are loved and you are worth it, because we need to remember that, to take it with us. And, like I say, Catherine, I can't thank you enough. I've got so much gratitude for the work that you do over there, and I really appreciate the time that you've given me as well.
Well, back and forth.
I'll give you the mic back.
Right. And I will take that back, and then I will use this mic with you next week when we do this on your side of the pond. I wish I was there physically.
Yeah, ditto. It'd be lovely.
I look forward to going back. I went to the UK with a bunch of women. We did a women's spiritual history tour. Glastonbury. We walked on.
Wow.
We walked on fire at the base of the tour there in Glastonbury, which was really cool to walk on fire. And we went to the Chalice Well and Cornwall and all that. So it was lovely. So anyway, I'm going to stop recording now, and I'll put your information on this so people can reach you. Hang on.